Hi guys, I am Christine, and this is my presentation on the neurobiological theory for This is Theory. Gotta move over here. So, neurobiology. Neurobiology, as we know it, is the study of the cells and tissue that make up the nervous system. So, as we know, the brain is the most complex organ in our body. I found that studies that are performed on our brains often do not give researchers answers to close the distance on how and what the brain does and how it does it. So neurobiology takes the brain and really dissects into its functionings with the cells and the tissue that make up the nervous system. I'll move over here. So for the histories and origins, our only means of knowing how our brain works are to advance areas that will offer us a better grasp of how they develop. So modern technology is a great way to do that. But before modern technology, interest in the brain and understanding of human behaviors is traced back way to the ancient Greek philosophers. Neuroscientists now examine the brain's structure, functions, developments, disorders, and ways that the nervous system can be changed. So Joseph Breuer, an Austrian physician and physiologist, was Sigmund Freud's mentor for many years. And Sigmund Freud's interest in neurosis and mental illness started in 1885 after him and Breuer wrote a book about theories of hysteria about a patient. Freud and Breuer helped stabilize neurobiology as an essential field of work. Before it was taken up as a field of study, researchers and practitioners were using different tools to try and understand brain functioning, coming to separate conclusions, unable to correlate just one proficient method that was reliable in giving consistent answers. So Breuer, and Freud discovered that an illness or physical disruption could affect a brain's functioning. So they found correlation between that which previous researchers and doctors could not conclude that together or agree on it. And they found that a brain can still function while being ill, and these pioneer scientists attempted to see if our brains function differently when ill or disturbed. So for this origins and history continued from my paper, Freud had to create his system of psychotherapy following a theoretical approach made by Breuer. So this established the relationship between neurobiology and psychoanalysis, which has many similar features and approaches. So in 1885, before Freud went off on his own, there was the famous case of Anna O, which was described to Freud about Joseph, who had her as a client first. This began their famous study on health of the mind and disease. Breuer discovered by getting Anna to talk about her dreams and delusions, he might lessen the severity of her symptoms. So, in order to get inside her head and dreams, he hypnotized her. This, I don't know, is very sufficient, but it worked and was a means of finding that when he discovered that thoughts might possibly contribute to mental disorders, so her thoughts, and that symptoms could disappear if the fundamental causes were brought to light. So confronting a patient with their illness, as Joseph theorized, would make them shut down, which is dissociation from pioneer Pierre Paget to assert that importance of dissociation in mental illness. So I guess that Joseph's hypnosis phase really worked for some people, because now we had Pierre come in and try to make it better and not hypnotize people. So from Joseph's point of view, if the individual is unable to feel and express the emotions related to the traumatic experience, they are dissociated, that is, an isolated and separate state of consciousness that is inaccessible to ordinary awareness. So his only idea was on how to get into Anna's head was to find a way that she would have all of her guard down and layers down and be able to tell him everything she knew. An example of how understanding of the of how neurobiology developed further throughout the late 19th century and beyond, I found from an article by Ricardo Vieira Teles in 2020. It was a well-studied patient who helped neuroscientists understand the connection between the brain and the behavior, and this patient was Phineas Gage. So now we're coming to founding principles and ideas. In the accident of Phineas Gage on September 13th, 1848, Phineas was a railroad foreman placing equipment for the laying of an iron track. He used a tamping iron to pack explosive powder. He got distracted and hit a rock that caused a spark and the dynamite to explode. So the tamping iron punctured through his left side of his face, under his cheek, and landed a few feet behind him. So as you can see in this picture of Phineas, he carried that tamping iron with him from the accident until he died, because that was his main claim to fame. And as you can see on the bottom example on how the rod entered his skull, punctured up, and somehow landed, did not stay in his brain, which is a miracle. Phineas was briefly knocked unconscious. Within a few minutes, he was up on his feet, conversing with his coworkers. As if this phenomenon of him surviving such an accident was not strange enough, Phineas waited for a doctor to come to his house for hours after his accident, whilst conscious. The damage to Phineas was in his prefrontal cortex, so he lost the ability to make decisions and problem solve promptly for his age. Having appeared to be all right since he was functioning and still had his memory from the accident, no one thought it was possible that anything was wrong on the outside. So, before his accident, doctors and professionals believed that our frontal lobes were parts of our brains that did not contribute to functioning of our emotions or behaviors. This was one of the first scientific proof that the frontal lobe damage can affect personality, emotions, and social interaction, in Gage's case. His case showed me proof that the field of psychology and neurobiology is ever-changing, even by miracles. So, Phineas did not have the best ending to his life 10 to 12 years later, but he got another chance, which was unexplainable. That's another way I can sum up the field of neurobiology. A lot of it is unexplainable. He did lose his job, he lost a lot of his friends because he became not Phineas, as some of the articles described him. He went through a big personality change, and he started drinking and gambling, and he ended up traveling the world. Not because he was rich, just because he was looking for jobs. And at one point, he ended up in South America. Okay. But moving on from Phineas, I could talk about him all day because he's really interesting. So, as we recall from the case of Anna O, principles of neuroscience give an insight into the process of underlying traumatic experiences for men, women, and children as well. So, the founding principles of neurobiology are not a focused group of principles. Researching this topic, I discovered at least 3 different sources of different founding and current principles. So, I found these guiding principles for neurobiologists: making access to safety essential, anticipating special issues related to capacity, autonomy, agency, protecting the privacy and confidentiality of neural data, attending to possible harmful uses of neuroscience, tools, and neurotechnology. Over the course of the research on our brains and being active in treating people, these principles correlate to founding ethical principles for medicine that all the founding fathers of neuroscience, psychology, psychiatry, and behaviorism have promised in one way or another. They are different in their own respects, but all look at the brain's function, makeup, processing, and relaying of information from people. As we look deeper into the trickling effects of trauma, poverty, and stress in our lifespans, neuroscience provides significant implications for systems that care and serve children and families. So, on to personal thoughts of my paper. I really like the topics of personality and mental illnesses a lot. It's just really interesting for me to read. I chose to write about the theory because of the study of the brain and its functions are something I really want to get to know, because I'm one of those people who think my brain is too complicated too. So looking into the history and the theory, it was kind of difficult for me because there are just so many sources, and neurobiology has branched off into so many different types of treatment. It was hard to just narrow it down to the founding principles. I did a lot of research not too long ago about the prefrontal cortex and formation and its function in intelligence tests used in clinics today. But I did also learn something new, that the neurobiological theory has helped over half a century of researchers and professionals uncover biological mechanisms by which nervous systems mediate behavior. Social work practitioners often rely on memories, both short and long term, of clients to co-construct with the client's narratives that capture the client's current and past history. So it's crucial for social workers and practitioners to have a fundamental understanding of how short-term and long-term memory work, as well as the fundamental neurobiological and chemical elements involved in memory creation, which is consolidation, storage, and retrieval. Social work is not medicine, neither are social workers and neuroscientists medical practitioners, but in the importance of this in social work is that we don't have to compete with psychology or psychiatry. Rather, it's about professional and ethical obligation to stay aware of research on evidence-based practices and to retain information in a way that makes sense to our clients. To examine the biological mechanisms underlying behavior, neuroscientists, I found, have to develop novel and sophisticated methods. This has allowed professionals to make more informed decisions on mental interventions and therapies. But we must understand that the call for social work is equal to the importance of all other fields for mental health. In understanding the complexity of one's environment, neurobiological theories apply to all when being treated. I really thought it was so clear, cut, and dry on how different they were, but due to our brain's complex development, professionals can hesitate to explore this side of neuroscience because it's very high-tech and advanced, and it can seem scary, but I found that neuroscience has a real benefit to social work, psychology. Even though it is complicated, it has a lot of answers that we can ultimately provide our clients in the future. And concluding with my personal thoughts, I thought in the end the neurobiological theory is just a versatile theory with so many branches reaching out to multiple treatment options due to functioning in all sides of the brain. And understanding on how things operate on a regular basis might assist to clarify potential outcomes, like in sessions, recognizing signs, and just looking over, as you can see, like images. But I also liked how this theory dives into clinical applications, interpreting research, and creating insight into a client's self as well as others. Also, while reshaping their brain structures, it can really help researchers in discovering solutions to issues that impact the body, the neurological system, and the brain. But we still have so much to learn about our brains and the illnesses that affect them. But with using neuroscience, social workers in the field of social work can use this theory and the tools that come with it to their advantage to better help serve the communities that they're in. And here are my works cited. I'm sorry if this was kind of short. I had a 15-minute timer, but I really hope that I explained the neurobiological theory as the best way I can on how I see it and how important it is for us to keep that branch in mind when it comes to thinking of our patients and their health and just looking deeper beneath the surface of their problems, whether it could be brain damage or an illness or just basic cognitive functioning issues. So I hope I really pleaded for the neurobiological theory to become more popular in your line of work, or you to remember it in any of your cases or your environments that you're working in. Thank you.